what I'm going to do now to break up some of this very consistent edge wear is I'm going to, in my overall folder mask, going to add a fill. And then I've got my procedurals down here, and I want something that's got like kind of big chunks taken out of it. That might be a little bit too watercolory. I will use this one. Actually, let's see. So if you're trying to follow along exactly, this is Grunge Map 007. I wouldn't really recommend following along exactly. It's probably going to be a little bit frustrating. Better for you to just sort of like look at the overall concepts, and then let me know if you've got any questions. So you can see we're getting something that's not remotely what we're looking for here. And we need to go ahead, I kind of want to make it a little bit tighter in the tiling. And I'm going to go ahead and set this one to subtract. Sorry, I think it's add. Right, okay. So, and what I'm doing with add is I'm just taking the pixels wherever they are lighter and adding them in, and wherever they are darker, I'm knocking them out so that we can start to get this kind of thing. This particular blend is not the only one that you could use. You can always, if you want, you can just kind of like pick the blending thing here and then just kind of hit the down arrow and see which one of them is going to give you the result that you're looking for. So this is divide. That's actually fine too, in that, you know, what I'm looking for is I just want to use a repeating procedural here to break up this very, very straight line. So there's lighter value, and you can see how it is all working. So you don't necessarily have to memorize what the underlying math is for everything. So here's screen, whatever, right? So let's say that's acceptable for now. But you can see it has applied itself all over the place because it doesn't necessarily understand that the rest of the stuff is off limits. So I've got my paint here, and the paint is what I use to clean this up in this piece, but it isn't necessarily going to apply to everywhere. We can kind of drag this up to the top, and it should punch out the areas. Right, so you can see that just cleaned up the stuff that we explicitly painted. And as long as we keep the paint layer on top, it should work pretty well. But we're going to need a way to basically say nothing here should be applied to any of these areas. So I'm actually going to add another color selection mask here, just like the one we started with, except in this case I'm going to set the value all the way to black. And we can just go ahead and pick some of these other colors. So I just grabbed red, but I actually want the outside of this to be consistent. Oops. So anyway, you're not limited to one color selection. You're also not limited to that color selection having a particular value. It can be black or white or whatever, right? Like you can always change your mind about all these things. Looks like I need to add it to the front as well. I kind of like what's going on with that dirtiness there, but I kind of want to I want to visit those as a separate object later. It looks like that's just the metal, the base metal there. So all right, what do we have now? Right now, we have this, our powder coat mask, and it's looking like this. So if we've come back and we revisit here, that's looking, I mean, sure, right? Like it's the edge wear frequency and whatever is looking okay. So now, even though I said I don't want to use any brush strokes, I'm going to come over here and we're gonna do this. And it's, you know, you can pretty easily get to a point where it's like, what the hell does this layer do or that layer? So it can be useful to name things according to whatever they are. Let's see, brushes, and I'm going to come over to something kind of scratchy looking. And again, depending on how many updates they've made, since I'm doing this and since you have decided to watch this video, it may look a little bit different. for what you see. I'm going to do, well, let's see. Looking for something kind of specific. One of these guys. So I've got this hatching, so I'm just going to double click it. So I've got my paint selected. I have named it helpfully brush. And we are going to be painting black because I want to actually paint through the paint and reveal the metal underneath. And I'm using a mouse here, which is not necessarily the best way to go. If you've got a tablet, that's probably preferable. Not really feeling that anyway. So many choices. You know what? We're just going to skip that for now and look at something else. I'm going to keep that in there because I will probably want to come back and play with it, but I kind of want to do an overall pass with the procedural stuff before I come in and start tinkering with the details. Like, I'd like to add a little bit of this kind of stuff where it's just kind of punched in a little bit more dramatically, but I need to do a little bit of homework off camera to figure out which is going to be the best brush for that. All right, so right now you can see this looks like it's got some dirt and dust and whatever, and what that's going to do, even if you don't really see it that much, it's going to break up the specular highlight. So that's kind of what I want to do next. So I'm going to come over and make a new fill. So these here, this is all like masking stuff, so I don't really want to mess with that. What I want to do is I want to come down to what's actually in the layer itself, and we can see this is our noise, so I don't really want to play with the noise. Whoops, looks like I just drew on accident. So I'm going to make a new fill in here, and I'm going to turn everything off except the roughness. So now this, even though it's totally transparent in the base color, if I were to hop over to roughness, you can see it'll actually have a value which correlates to what's going on right here. And if I change this, we should see this value update. I don't know if it's clever enough to do that. But you can see it is applying this roughness value, there we go, it updated, to the entire thing, everything that's inside of our powder coat layer. And I don't really want to do that. I just want to, I'm going to hop back over to base color because this doesn't really mean anything. I know what this layer does, it's roughness. So I'm going to add a black mask. And then inside the black mask, I'm going to add a fill. And then I'm going to come over to grunges. Grunges and procedurals, I think the only difference is the procedurals tile very evenly and the grunges don't necessarily tile. But depending on whether or not, like, this is going to be 0 to 1, so if this doesn't actually go beyond your borders, you probably won't encounter a texture seam, though certainly it is possible. And something to keep an eye on. So that's looking okay. I'm going to go ahead and just make it a little bit denser. We'll just double that. So we're getting a little bit of some variety there, and I'm going to go ahead and add another fill and just grab a completely different grunge here. I almost don't even care. Great, let's go ahead and tile this one a few times. And then I'm just going to blend these. So we'll try a multiply. And you can see what the addition of this one looks like. You can see what this one is contributing. Well, because it's a multiply, if I set it to, if I turn the base one off, it's going to go to 0. But I think that's looking reasonably good. That's kind of what I had in mind. I just want to break it up a little bit, make it a little bit more dirty and irregular. And again, I haven't painted anything yet. That is because I couldn't find a brush I liked, but still, you know, we're getting a pretty good natural feeling result here. And it's all just basically combining fills and procedurals and grunges. And that's just so much better and so much faster than trying to do this by hand. So in the next video, we're just going to keep pushing forward with this stuff.